I'm just so pleased that we have this opportunity to hear Tanya Goretzki, who is the person in charge of our Thrive Care program of children and families. Everyone in this room, I know, remembers how we all got started in this great adventure. Little did we know that a pandemic was coming and what that might mean to the operations of such intensive daily program. You know, I told Tanya when I asked her to do this, that the discussions that are going on in our nation around early childhood education make it so important for us to know what the issues are and how important it is that we are informed. And so we have a firsthand experience here within our church that gives us that opportunity to get informed. And so I'm very happy you're here today, Tanya. And we'll listen and we'll have some time for questions at the end.
Thank you, Eileen. So yes, had we had a crystal ball and seen this pandemic coming, maybe we would have changed the date. I don't know. I feel like October 1st of 2018, what seems like a long, long time ago after navigating a global pandemic. But I also feel like I can remember that day like it was yesterday. And I can remember all of the, I was hired in January of 2018, and 10 months, or really 9 months, there's a lot of work packed into there. And I can remember Dick's 17 versions of the budget and the case I, case J, case K, and really all the effort that went into making this right, which I really appreciate because we wanted to get it right from the start. And we certainly have shown that we're doing a lot of things right down here at Thrive. So I'll give you a little bit of just some cute kid pictures, because who doesn't like cute pictures of kids? I feel like I'm in your right seats. So we're licensed for 82. That hasn't changed. We have our 6 classrooms. I would say when you come into Thrive, the infants will grab you immediately, especially our older infants that like to wave at people and say hi. They're really great ambassadors of Thrive and all the fun things that we do here. We currently have 14 infants in our 2 infant programs, and we can have up to 16. Babies come when babies come. So scheduling openings for our infants is always a really interesting, intricate Excel spreadsheet. We actually have our enrollment projected out to 2025 for our infants or for our preschoolers, because we take those infants and put them in all the way through until they go to kindergarten. Our next infant opening isn't until May of 2023. And a year out is really typical. We have over 70 families on our waiting list for our infant program. And it breaks my heart when people call, because all I can say is our next opening is May of 2023, and there are about 73 people before you. So the demand for childcare is higher than I have ever experienced in all of my years in early childhood. And we also have a really interesting phenomenon happening at Thrive. So we have 16 infant spots. 13 of those spots are going to be filled or are currently filled with siblings of children who are either in our toddler or our preschool program, which is a great problem for us to have. We want those families to stay. So it's fun to see the second generation of Thrive coming through our doors in our infant program. And our toddlers, of course, they're crazy. They're right across from my office. So I'm quite a distraction, and we end up running into door jams, and because they all have to wave and say hi. But they are the busiest crew down here, and certainly keep their teachers on their toes, and they're singing and dancing, babbling, and all the language that they're learning is fun to listen to and to watch as they go about their days. Their absolute favorite thing to do is to sing and dance. So if you ever need a pick-me-up, come watch the toddlers dance. It's hilarious. It's a good stress reliever for me. I tend to get a little bit distracted because they're right across from my office. And then we have our preschoolers. We have 30 preschoolers, and I can remember when we had 3 preschoolers, and now 30 seems like so many. And they are also busy crews. We have both of our classrooms open. And one of the things that we've, I would say, focused on over the first year of existence was really embracing our curriculum and really implementing it with fidelity. So we use the creative curriculum for all of our classrooms, but preschool's curriculum is really interesting because they do studies. And studies are really just broad topics that they can spend 4 to 6 weeks studying. So for example, one of the studies is balls. And you think, that's an interesting topic to discuss for 6 weeks. But you can talk about which balls roll, do all balls roll, what shapes are they, we can talk about inclines, we did experiments, we taped toilet paper tubes to the walls and made a little maze for the ball to go down. And within all the topics, all of the concepts are built in. So we're hitting all the important developmental milestones for those kids and giving them opportunities to practice those skills. I think their favorite one was the clothing study. And one of our preschool teachers happens to sew. So we had all kinds of fabric, and they drew up plans and they sewed with their sewing machine, whatever their creation was. So it was fascinating to see it go from this plan all the way, and they executed up to having it all hanging on the clothesline down our hallway for them to talk about and give great descriptions about. We tend to live in an area where there's lots of construction. So the building study was really fun. We even managed to get Kent to agree to show the kids all of the tools that he uses to keep this building fixed and all those kinds of fun tasks that he gets to do. So it's really fascinating to watch them. What you think wouldn't take much time ends up taking a good 6 weeks. And sometimes they take longer because the children are that interested in it, and they're maybe taking it away that we didn't think they would want to discover, and then we do it all over again. They're currently doing the gardening study, so that's fun. They're going to walk down to the food co-op, which is nice that we have that right here in our neighborhood, so they can see all the kinds of produce that they can grow, and then do some growing as well. The other piece that we're really proud of, we're proud of a lot of things, but Peer and Aware is Minnesota's quality rating system. So in our first year, just after December of 2019, we went through our very first Peer and Aware rating cycle. And Peer and Aware is basically, we get coaching, they come in and do an observation, we turn in a binder full of paperwork, really to prove that we are high quality. And based on all of those things, they give you either 1, 2, 3, or 4 stars. So in December 2019, we received our 4-star rating, which we were really happy about because we were brand new. And then we just did it again in December of 2021, which looked totally different because of COVID, but we still received our 4-star rating. And the really nice thing about being part of Parent Aware is that you get a $4,000 grant to purchase items to maybe you want to beef up your gross motor play or your fine motor play. The first time we bought all science, everything we purchased for that $4,000 was around science. So we could really boost up that piece, that part of our curriculum. And this year they did a lot of gross motor outdoor play. But we also get a bonus from childcare assistance. So for families that are on childcare assistance through the county, if they enroll in a 4-star program, the provider gets a higher percentage of a reimbursement rate. So right now, childcare assistance covers our rates, which if we were a 1-star, would not be the case. So there would be a shortfall there. So that's a little bit about kind of the program side. So how many of you remember that we started with 5 children? I think we had more staff, we had children. It's a really great number because I remember those quiet days. Yeah, just really settling in and kind of getting our feet wet on a very slow pace. And we were rolling, and we were enrolling more kids. We had opened all 6 of our classrooms finally. And then a little thing called COVID came, and 18 months after we opened, our enrollment had hit 56 in February of 2020. We were super excited about that. And then all of a sudden, really literally in the blink of an eye, we went to 35 when the world shut down. And it literally shut down overnight. I can remember driving to work and there was no traffic. There was no one on the roads. There was no one in this building except for us. So it was definitely a quiet time. But everyone was told to stay home, right? We all stayed home, we hunkered down, except for the essential workers. And all of a sudden, early care and education became essential. And I said, finally, we are essential. Someone has finally realized what we've known all along is that this world doesn't work without us. Right. And I can remember when I was in college and K-12 was where it was at. And we didn't really talk much about birth to 5. And if you haven't worked in birth to 5, well, good luck, because you're not going to get paid very much. Because the money is in K-12. Oh, that was back in the early, mid-90s, I'll say. But what we know, and people are slowly starting to realize, is if we don't get birth to 5 right, K-12 is really hard and really challenging for kids. So we know we want to get it right, and we were jumping for joy because Governor Walz said out of his mouth that we're going to be stories told about the childcare providers that stepped up and became essential during this pandemic. So we kept our doors open. It was weird, and it was hard. It was probably by far the hardest, I don't know, however many months we're going on now, of my life as an early care and education professional. I had 2 kids at home who were supposed to be distance learning. Thankfully, they were older, so I guess they could do it on their own. And my husband was also deemed essential. So we were both going to work, and the rest of the world sort of shut down. We had lots of parents who were also deemed essential that needed to go to work. And they would come in with tears in their eyes because we were still open. And they could still go physically to their job and do their job. Our staff stepped up. Some of our staff couldn't come to work because they had young children that were now distance learning, and they had to stay home with their kids. So it was a shuffle of who's going to be here, how many kids are going to be here, how much revenue are we losing by not having kids here? We're still paying our teachers. It was the most complex puzzle that I think we've ever experienced, and I hope we never experience it again. And really, we felt like we were putting ourselves at risk for the benefit of our kids and our families. We didn't know much about COVID. We didn't know that millions of people were going to die. We came to work and we did our job. And I think that is one of the things I will always carry with me, is how proud I am of our staff that didn't waver and really stepped up and did the hard work, because we know that our kids needed us. So we learned a lot about all kinds of things. I now have a degree in reading the decision tree from the Department of Health. And every time it changes, now they've retired it, so we don't have to use that anymore. But I really think childcare was sort of set up to survive a pandemic a little bit from a cleaning perspective. We already had to clean, we already had to disinfect, we already had to do all those things. So that wasn't a big deal to us because we were already doing those things. But we took temperatures. I probably purchased 10 different thermometers to try to find the best, most accurate thermometer ever out there. And we erred on the side of caution. Our board of directors was very much erring on the side of caution. So if that meant a staff member was out for 3 days waiting for test results, because in 2020, that's how long it took, that's what we had to do to make sure that we weren't spreading COVID at Thrive. It still happened and it still came to Thrive. Thankfully, it did not spread anywhere at Thrive, so we were happy about that. We had to shut down 3 of our classrooms 3 separate times. And we actually closed for 2 full days because so many of our staff were exposed that we didn't have enough staff to run the program. None of those staff got sick, so that was good. But when the quarantines were still a thing, we were all home quarantining, myself included. So we did close for 2 days and then ran a very bare bones staff meeting licensing ratios after that for the last 3 days of that week. So as a director, I felt like I was carrying this program on my shoulders more than I ever had felt that way before. I know my hair is grayer. I may have eaten more snacks and treats than I should have, but we showed up and we did what we had to do. But I feel like I couldn't do that without my staff, and I certainly couldn't do that without our board of directors. So when you see anyone that's on our board, thank them for the work that they did, because I know they worried too. They worried about all kinds of things like, are we going to make it through this pandemic, which was a huge thing, 18 months after we opened. But our parents, we have never been thanked so much in our lives because they were able to still go to work. So you're probably wondering, how did you keep your program open with only 35 kids and you're still paying your staff? So the payroll protection program came around and saved lots of us. We were able to continue to pay our staff, even if they were home with their kids doing distance learning. We didn't charge families. One of the rules of the payroll protection program was we couldn't charge our families. So we couldn't charge our families, but we still had to pay our staff. Now we got plenty. We got $127,000. It covered all of our wages for our staff. And it sent a really nice message to our staff that we understand that you're going through this. The state of Minnesota offered monthly grants, and all this money was sort of trickling down from the federal government. The state of Minnesota offered monthly grants that we could apply for that were $8,500 to deal with COVID, basically, is what they came down to. The board approved bonuses whenever we could, whenever we had some extra grant money left. That's what it was targeted for, to thank people for coming to work. And recently, the state of Minnesota has rolled out stabilization grants. And stabilization grants, the goal of them is really to stabilize childcare for families and for teachers. So 70% of your monthly grant has to go towards your staff. So that could be monthly bonuses. You could pay for health benefits. You can raise their hourly wage, or you can use it for buying bleach. If you need money to buy bleach to supplement your budget for those COVID-related things. So the board had a big decision to make about what to do with this money, because it's really about anywhere from $6,000 to $9,000 a month that we get from the stabilization grant. And it's all based on how many hours our teachers work. So the board approved that about 90% of our grant goes to monthly bonuses for our staff. So once a month, staff get like a $300 to $400 bonus, which is about $2.50 an hour is really what they get. And we did it as a bonus because we didn't want to change their hourly wage because the stabilization grant is going to end. And then we would have had to change we would not be able to afford a $2.50 raise for every staff member. So they agreed to that. The remainder of it is used to offset the parent shares for families that are on tuition assistance. So their parent shares became less, so they had a little more money. With gas prices right now, I'm sure they're very thankful for even that little bit that they get. And staff and parents are certainly grateful. That money will start phasing out here in July of 2022. And the goal is that by the end of June of 2023, nobody needs it anymore. There's not a magic wand. For anyone that knows or has heard that childcare is struggling, I think that's really an understatement. So we know that the work we do is really great and we do high quality work, but we're still struggling. Childcare across the country is struggling. How many of you heard there's a childcare crisis? There is a childcare crisis in this nation. And part of it is parents are paying so much money for childcare. Our infant parents are paying $360 a week for childcare. And I can't pay my staff a living wage. And we're one of the highest paid centers in Rochester. So when we opened our doors and we said, we're going to pay our lead teachers $17 an hour, I had directors that didn't live like me. Because then teachers came from other centers because they could make more money. On average, childcare workers make about $23,000 a year, which is about $11.75 an hour. So we're always doing this. We're always hiring because what's happening is people are leaving the early care and education field because they can go to Quick Trip and make $15 an hour, and it's a lot less work. Being responsible for the care and education of our youngest little people is really, really hard work. And when we do our budget, staff are prioritized. Always staff are prioritized. And what can we do? We give yearly raises every single year based on performance. And that is something that the board plugs into the budget from the beginning, that we know we're going to give a 4% raise based on performance. So what's the deal here when we think about this childcare crisis? I think about that Quick Trip worker, and when I go there and I buy a gallon of milk, they're getting paid more than my teacher who's educating the next generation. And there's just something that's not right about that. It doesn't sit well with me. And I'm sure it doesn't sit well with anyone who has any vested interest in early care and education. So during the pandemic, so many centers closed for good. They're not opening their doors again because that was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back. We can't do it, it's stressful, we can't find people to work. And so they just closed their doors. Teachers are leaving the fields to go work in other areas. We have people that have gone to be nurses because there's also this nursing shortage that we're trying to figure out too. And everyone's hiring, right? There's help wanted signs everywhere. And certainly coming to early care and education at a childcare center is not, usually we don't get droves of people that come knocking on my door to apply for a job. So what happens when we are losing centers? We lose childcare spots. And what happens when we lose teachers? We can't cover classrooms. So what happens? Centers close. That's certainly something that's happened. Centers they close classrooms within their center. I have a friend who had a teacher that retired. She just closed the classroom because she didn't have any staff to replace that teacher. Or centers are pausing their enrollment. So we have 61 children at Thrive. We could have 82. But we have 61 because that's what we have staff for. We have had a perpetual ad on Indeed. I have a love-hate relationship with Indeed forever. And it's really, really challenging to find people. I could put 21 more children into Thrive tomorrow if I had 2 teachers hired and on payroll today. And I think about our waiting lists. There, infants are over 70, or toddlers and preschool are over 60. Oh, it would be so refreshing to take 21 of those names off that list because they're looking for care right now. Recently, a center in Rochester closed because they couldn't find staff. They were open less than they opened after us, and they just shut their doors. And the phone calls we received from distraught parents because finding infant and toddler care is really, really good. So a lot of families are going to family prep and neighbor care, finding nannies in their home, if that's what they can afford. But certainly families that are on child care assistance or families that are on our tuition assistance can't afford any for them. So what are we thinking about? I think about this word a lot. It sticks in my brain. It's been ingrained in my brain because we're essential, right? People are telling us we're essential. And that's what we heard during the height of the pandemic, was that you're essential. We need you to stay open and please continue to do what you do. And everybody can go to work because we have early care and education people. Last week, there was a day with no childcare movement nationally. And so they encouraged centers to close their doors to see what would happen if there was no childcare. Seemed radical to Tanya, so that is not what we did, because our families still need to go to work. But I think it's the message that needs to be shouted from the rooftops, is that early care and education really does matter, and it really is essential. And I think now there's an opportunity to prove that we are essential. There's a lot of work, like Eileen said, happening right now around fully funding childcare. And I don't want this to turn into a political conversation, but there are opportunities for people to share their voices, to tell those important policymakers why early care and education is so important. I was looking at the proposals, and it's fascinating to read all the fine print, and I'm sure I didn't even get to the fine print of those proposals, but to see what is important to those people that are sort of far removed. I was asked recently, if I had a magic wand, what would I do to fix childcare? And my answer was pretty simple. I want to be seen. And I want to be seen because when we're seen, then we matter. When people really, really understand what early care and education is and what happens if we don't have it, then maybe there'll be some funding that also gets put behind us. There's talk of creating an early care and education system, sort of like there's the education system for K-12, but there would be separate. There's talk about making the stabilization bonuses or grants permanent, that it will always be something that centers can apply for. There's conversations around supporting staff to take higher ed classes so they can become certified teachers and have that college degree. There's all kinds of things, but no one agrees, of course. So they are doing lots of conversations with those that are wavering to try to help them understand why it's important. I will say one of the things that I appreciate about our board is we have to try to figure out how to create staff. A magic wand that I'm going to find. And one of the things that the board has agreed to is that when we have childcare, when we have aides in our program, and they are good aides, right? They come to work, they show effort, they love those kids, they do everything and anything they want to be in this industry. The board has said, all right, you have proven to us that you are what we want. We're going to get you qualified to be an assistant teacher. So the board pays for them to take their classes to get their child development associate certificate, which then qualifies them from a licensing perspective to be able to be an assistant teacher or a lead teacher. That has been life-changing for some of our staff. We have our very first one She's now a lead teacher in our toddler room. And I think about when she came to us making $10 an hour, and now she's about to have her third baby, and she's making over $18 an hour as a lead teacher. That's life changing for her. And it didn't cost her anything. All she had to do was do a really good job for us, and we paid for that. So we now have, we'll have 4 people total that'll finish that. So we're filling those positions, but it doesn't happen overnight. It takes them 6 months to a year to do it, but we have them sort of in the pipeline to get them certified. And I think that it costs me less to pay for a CDA than it does for me to post an ad on Indeed for a week. Kirkland's shaking his head, he knows the numbers. It's crazy. And everybody is on Indeed, so you don't really stand out when you're on Indeed. So what can you do? Well, I mean, if you're one of those people that likes to talk to those important people up there, call them up. Ask them what they think about early care and education. Tell them the Thrive story and how awesome it is to have this program right here in our building. I think those are the stories that they have a hard time ignoring, is when there's something or someone attached to it. You know, we have families, that story I just told you about our teacher who's now making over $18 an hour, which still isn't enough. I would pay my teachers $25 an hour. And that is one of the things that they're talking about, is that they want childcare salaries to be more in line with kindergarten teacher salaries. So we'll see. So you can certainly do that. I think it's most important just to talk about early childhood and talk about early care and education. Even if you don't have a little one in your house, you've got grandkids, you've got friends, you've got nieces and nephews. I think that's what we have to advocate for ourselves. I was talking with a community organizer last week, and she said, nobody's going to advocate for us. So we have to do it. We have to speak loud and clear about how important they are. And I think that's why this early care and education has become sort of the title. So it's not just childcare. We're not just caring for kids, we're educating them and making sure that they're ready for kindergarten when they leave us. And really helping us tell the story that we really do matter. So here's some cute little faces that maybe you can see. These are some of our littlest ones at Thrive. You know, I think about the important start that we give our kids so they can be successful in not just kindergarten, but in life. And we meet them where they are and pick them up from there. So if they come to us when they're a preschooler, we meet them there and carry them on. I think the family piece is always really fascinating. I love that we're a small center because we get to know our families. Our Family Resource Center stepped up during this pandemic like nobody ever has, thinking about how do we create take-home meals for families and offer video parent education so that they are still able to fulfill that mission piece of our that is really important to our program. They're getting impatient because they really want to have a family night again, and hopefully we will plan one here for the summer. But I think about how important we are so that parents can go to work and they can do their jobs and they can make a livable wage to support their families. And we really just want everybody to feel the same way, that we matter and that we're important. So that's my soapbox. Any questions? Yeah.
Do they still have children at the community college for childhood?
Yeah, so they do have that program. They're sort of in a rebuilding phase. I don't know if you've heard, but their main instructor was tragically killed in a car accident last year. And so they've sort of had to reset a little bit. Their graduating classes are tiny, like 4. I'm on the advisory committee for that program. And they're ramping up post-pandemic. A lot of they've done a really good job of trying to schedule classes over nap time. So for people who are working in centers already, it's easier to get them off during that nap time to take a class, do an online class. But it's still a struggle for them. Yeah.
So there is a fund originally set up, to help parents that couldn't pay their full price. So that is ongoing.
Yes.
And how many are on?
So we've helped 31 families so far since we opened our doors. Right now, there are 8 families that are on our tuition assistance. And then I was so excited because one of the things the board has always wanted is to get their hands on the waiting list for childcare assistance from the county, which is never going to happen, but we can wish. So we can find those people that are waiting for childcare assistance. And one of our families has been on the waiting list, and they finally got an answer that they make about $200 too much to qualify for childcare assistance. So thankfully, we were able to pick them up on our tuition assistance program because they wouldn't be at Thrive if we didn't have that.
We have a beautiful program, which I'm very glad that my granddaughter brings that they will be part of. How many employees do you currently have? How many total staff?
Yeah. So we have 17 is what we have right now. Thrive has always been overstaffed, and I say that very not meaning that we're being wasteful. But licensing gives us these numbers and says, you know what, you can be alone with 4 babies, you'll be fine. I don't know if anyone in here has ever been alone with 4 babies, but it is not easy. Or 10 preschoolers is not easy either. So our goal has always been to have 3 teachers in each of our classrooms. So as we've lost staff to other professions, we've still been able to run on with our ratios. Misty and I are in classrooms. I've been a preschool teacher. Last week, I became a preschool teacher and rediscovered the joy of singing about monkeys and chickens and all kinds of fun things. But our goal would really be to be closer to mid-20s. Other questions? Yeah.
Have you all board thought about putting together a list of the issues that you spoke about and have them available for the congregation, and particularly the persons who are running for office, so that those persons can be asked the questions and to respond, and we have a little bit more understanding of the
Yep. Yeah, there's an organization, I'm trying to remember what they're called.
With Isaiah?
So Isaiah was here last week, and their community organizer that came to talk to me is she's just a childcare organizer now.
Right, I'm thinking for our congregation.
Yes, yep,
And have that available pending narcotics.
sure,
And, because it is a political question,
it is.
and I don't think we want to, deny that. Once we do, we undermine the very thing that we're body politics. Well, politics is good if it's appropriately looked at. And
Right.
That's who we are.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. So on the day without childcare, everyone was supposed to wear purple, and I was like, that's interesting. Why purple? Because of course in early childhood, red and blue mix together to make purple, and everybody should be, friends and cohesive. So it was a very friendly way to send a message that it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat, like we just want you to come together. Other questions?
I think in following up with that, if we could have in that material some quotes from parents who are using the childcare, because people need to hear from individuals who could work or have had no way of getting childhood education for their families, and recognize what a terrific challenge it is.
I love that, terrific challenge. It is a terrific challenge. And I think the other thing that I'm thinking about or trying to brainstorm around is really, how do we help kids understand that being an early care and education teacher is possible. Like you can be that. John Marshall had a job fair that I just happened to see on KCC, covered it on the news. I was like, why did I hear about that? So I think there are some opportunities with the high school. They have teaching as a profession classes, just to tell them like, hey, working with us, I have an aide that worked with us when she was 16, she started. She's already assistant teacher qualified because she's been with us that long, and she's going to school for early care and education. So she can already replace an assistant teacher if we need her on school breaks. But I think those are the things that we also need to think about, those out of the box kind of things for getting young people to want to work with. One of the things that Karen Swenson, who's the director at Meadow Park, she said is, we have a generation of teachers that they're retiring. They've been in early care and education for 40 plus years. It's time for them to take a rest. But who's going to replace them? And I think that's the piece that there's a lot of panic around, is trying to figure out, and really thinking about it from a licensing perspective. We're licensed by the state of Minnesota. Licensing hasn't really done a whole lot to change anything for us when it comes to figuring out this crisis and how we might be able to adjust staff, or maybe the qualifications can be tweaked a little bit for some of those experienced people that maybe don't have enough credits, college credits, or enough experience in the childcare center. I interviewed people who are like, well, I'm a mom of 4 kids. I was like, I am sure you are qualified. But according to the state of Minnesota, you can only be an aide, and aides can't be left alone with kids. But I'm a mom of 4. I'm home with my kids all the time. So there's some of those things that are just a little bit crazy in our rules and regulations that don't always make sense to the people that aren't living in those rules and regulations. Well, I think, sorry.
I have been asked a couple of questions regarding the gifts that are given to Thrive and how that money is used. And we mentioned a bit, but I know the answer, but I think it's important for these folks to do it.
So funds that come in through the church, we get a check quarterly, and those go into our dedicated account that is only for tuition assistance. If we get a random check from a Christ Methodist Church member and it doesn't really specify, I still put it in that dedicated account because I feel like that's the people of Christ Methodist Church want that piece to really be funded, and it's an important piece. Does that answer?
And okay. Monies.
What?
Thrift on fifth.
Yes, same thing. So there's 2 separate line items, like there's gifts from CUMC and then there's thrift on fifth, but they're both dedicated to tuitions. So we don't get used for that.
And just out of curiosity, how much has thrift on fifth contributed?
I wish John was here. I don't have that number, but I can find it out.
It's thousands and thousands, tens of thousands.
Yes.
Well,
Right. Yeah.
I haven't got the number in my head.
But and our families use it, go to thrift on fifth.
Yes.
So yeah, they were excited to have it back open. That's for sure. Well, I appreciate your listening and your ears and your attendance, and always, continue to pray for Thrive and hope that we get those 2 teachers in you.
Tanya, I just want to say that we appreciate your leadership.
Thank you so much for coming.
Oh, we have one more question.
Is there some way that people could designate money they give? And how some of these aids fit into?
Absolutely. Professional development is sort of the budget line item that we use, and you can certainly, earmark it for that, and that will go into that pot. That's not a huge budget for us. So for the board to say, we have to do this, it costs right around a little bit less than $1,000 for someone to get, to take the classes, take the tests, do the observation. It's right around $1,000.
And I would just add that one of our goals was not only to help the families that are using Thrive, but to support the staff so that they are making it. So it was really important to us. We're not able to provide health insurance for our staff, which is, would be a wonderful thing to be able to do. Yes.
The new, I will say that, I mean, I could talk about the price, but we're opening retirement accounts for all of our staff this year. That's the new benefit that we're offering, because most early childhood people are retiring with no retirement. So we're trying to get them at their very young age of 20. I tend to put my mom hat on at that time and talk about how important retirement is. When we're young. Yeah.
If people want to give a request to try, or I don't, I'm just asking.
Yeah.
Probably somebody in the room knows about this. Can answer this part. A request, something to the foundation. I'm just asking what provisions do we have if people want to do that sort of thing?
You want to give a request, you can give a request to regular Thrive. They will you ask them to do. You can also give a request to the Church's Foundation. Same thing will happen. We'll treat it the way you want to treat it. But they're two separate things.
Right. And I just think that as we educate everyone in the congregation about requests and about our foundation, that's listed as one of the possibilities. If you want to, here's one of the things you can do. That's a recommendation on my personal.
Very good recommendation.
All right, well, for those of you that are going out to work in the gardens, bless you, thank you for making it beautiful. Every time I see Mary Schmidt, I'm like, you have done so much work around this. Like, her and Kathy are out there, I watched them in the courtyard, planting all the plants. So I appreciate all of your love and support for Thrive, and we will continue to do the great work we do. Thanks.